Welcome, everyone, to this briefing brought to you by the Israel Defense and Security Forum, IDSF. In Hebrew name is Bitchonistim. IDSF is the leading Israeli organization advocating for strong national security to defend Israel. Thank you to all of our viewers and supporters for tuning into this briefing. We have much to discuss. Obviously, the top of the headlines right now is this impending hostage deal with Hamas. Many of you have questions, so I'm very pleased to be joined today by Brigadier General Amir Avivi, the founder and chairman of IDSF, to address those questions, to explain his understanding and approach to what is happening right now. General, thank you so much, please.
My pleasure. So I think first we need to ask ourselves, why now? Why there is a deal now, hoping that the deal will happen? I must say that the deal is the same deal, exactly the same deal from May last year, which Hamas rejected again and again and again throughout the year until now. But obviously, something changed. And there are several things that changed that make Hamas today, for the first time, in a position where they're seriously considering doing the deal. And the changes are they lost Hezbollah and Lebanon that supported them. Syria fell. Iranians are deterred, and we heard them this week claiming we didn't try to assassinate Trump. We don't want nuclear weapons, and trying to from their side to calm things. But I think that the biggest change at the end of the day is the clear message of President Trump that says, if you don't release the hostages by the time I'm president, there will be hell. And I think that Hamas is assessing seriously whether they have a chance now to maximize what they might get, because they are getting a deal that was orchestrated by President Biden at the time of President Biden and not Trump. And they're asking themselves, what will happen if they don't do a deal? What will be the consequences? What is this hell Trump is talking about? And what would be the terms of a future deal? And I think they have an understanding that if they don't agree now, probably the situation for them will be much harsher later on. And anyway, they will be blamed for not agreeing. And the US and Israel will be free to do anything needed to destroy them and release the hostages. So this is why we're in a new reality. Now, this talking about the deal is creating a lot of anxiousness. People don't know what it means. Is the war over? Are we going to lose? What will happen with all the hostages? Are they releasing all of them? There are many, many questions. And I think that it's important to see the whole picture, and I'll try to do that. One thing that people are saying is, it's the claim, it's a terrible deal. It's a deal where Palestinian citizens, Palestinian Arabs in Gaza will be able to go back to north of Gaza, which we prevented until now. It's a deal where hundreds of terrorists will be released. Some of them maybe to Judea and Samaria, others will be exiled. It's a deal that will enable Hamas to rebuild itself in the coming months and a half, and it might endanger us from going back to fight. And if this happens, obviously this is devastating. And I think that all these claims are right. I mean, yes, it is a danger. And yes, Hamas is going to a certain extent to rebuild itself. And this claim is definitely something we need to take in account. On the other hand, many people say, but we have hostages. We must free our hostages. This is something that we need to do. And we owe them that. And more than a year, they are in captivity and they are in danger. Their lives are in danger. And they're also right. And it's a clear goal of war. We said we are going to release all the hostages one way or another. So the answer is really that there is no one answer, but I think that looking at the overall picture, We have been pushing strongly for a long time the goal of war that says eradicating Hamas as a military and governmental entity. We did release half of the hostages, but now time has come to do the effort and release the remaining hostages. Certainly at this stage, the women, the children, the elderly, people who are sick, all the people who might be in a very dire humanitarian situation. And I think that there is only one red line which we cannot agree to. This is stopping the war. We cannot agree to a reality that the deal stops the war, but I must reassure everybody and say this is not the case. Israel is not agreeing to stop the war. Israel is staying in Philadelphia corridor. We're staying in the perimeter. We keep full freedom of operation after the deal to go back and fight Hamas. But we understand that we need to get our hostages back, and we're taking advantage from this, I would say, convergence of interest between Biden and Trump. Both of them, for their own reasons, want this deal now. And Israel is seizing the moment to get it done. And of course, if Hamas won't agree, and on the 20th, President Trump will start his presidency and the deal wasn't agreed upon, Hamas will be fully blamed. And then, as President Trump said, hell will open and we'll have to deal with this in a completely different way. So very, very, I would say, defining moments these coming days. I can say that if there will be a deal, then we'll start getting our hostages, and probably the center of gravity of Israel and the IDF will move, at least for a while, from Gaza to Iran. And one of the big questions, it is something we don't know, is what are the discussions behind the scenes between Israel and the Trump administration, talking about the need to attack Iran, the need to deal with the Houthis, the need to impose the agreement fully in Lebanon and dismantle Hezbollah, make sure that the Lebanese army deploys in an effective way in South Lebanon and dismantles all the capabilities of Hezbollah. There are many, many issues, and we need to look all the time at the big picture, and the big picture hasn't changed. 4 goals of war. We need to achieve them all. We need to eradicate Hamas as a military and governmental entity. We need to bring back the hostages. We need to create a reality that never again there will be a terror army in Gaza. And we need to bring safely our citizens in the north. We visited Kiryat Shmona and the kibbutzim a week ago, and there are many, many challenges in rebuilding schools and other places and houses in Kiryat Shmona, and preparing the terms needed to bring back the citizens. It's not just about security, it's also about education and what to do with the children that are currently studying in other schools in the center of Israel, and how do you move them. We don't have double teachers. The teachers are in the center now, so what do you do? Can you now move them to Kiryat Shmona in the middle of the year? It's not clear. The schools are not necessarily prepared. So I think that realistically speaking, as the security situation stabilizes in the north, realistically speaking, just only in the summer, we'll see really all the northern population fully coming back home and opening a new year in the schools. And we met with the government officials that are dealing with the building of Kiryat Shmona and other places. And there are a lot of challenges at the moment, also in the north. Moshe?
General, thank you for sharing this certainly nuanced approach I think many of our viewers and many people in Israel looking at this situation come very hard on one side or the other. And it's obviously very difficult to weigh all of the considerations when we don't have all of the information. I'm curious to know, to what extent do you think is this deal seizing an opportunity, as you suggested, or potentially buckling to pressure from the US, from either administration on Israel's side?
So I think that all along, Israel had one main demand. We're not going to agree to stop the war. And Hamas didn't want to agree to that. And finally, they did. So it's not Israel that changed their mind. We're not under the pressure. It's Hamas under pressure. And we finally got Hamas to a place where he's agreeing to release the women, the children, really the most crucial people we want to see back, and without stopping the war, and without leaving Philadelphia even. So by staying in Philadelphia, we're preventing them from building themselves, from smuggling weapons, from bringing munitions and so on. Yes, they will be able to regroup to a certain extent, but as long as we are in Philadelphia, this creates a reality where their buildup is contained. They cannot do whatever they want.
Thank you. And, when looking at this deal with Hamas, there are two major issues to discuss. Number one, do you make a deal with terrorists? And then once you establish a yes to that question, if the answer is yes, then the question is the terms of the deal. Can you live with them, so to speak? And maybe you can share with us a little bit about this same dilemma, so to speak, although it didn't include the hostages, in terms of the deal with Hezbollah in Lebanon, that prior to the ceasefire, there was a lot of opposition in Israel to a ceasefire. Are you able to reflect on how the ceasefire has gone in Lebanon with Hezbollah, to maybe lay some perspective on what could happen with Hamas as a result of the deal?
Yeah, I think that each time there is a shift, there is a big change, people are very worried, very anxious. They don't know what will happen, what it means, where this is going. But I think that if we would have done a poll when the ceasefire was decided, and we'll do a poll now about the North, now it completely changed. There is massive support for the ceasefire because people suddenly see that this is actually working and we are keeping freedom of operation, and Hezbollah is not really managing to rebuild themselves. And now Saudi Arabia is demanding from Lebanon to dismantle Hezbollah, and Lebanon is moving more towards the Sunni moderates and not the Shia axis. And this creates dynamics. Today in the morning I was reading a wonderful article that General Gershon Cohen, our chairman, wrote. And he gave an example of this kind of decision-making and leadership that is required in moments like that. And he took as an example the Field Convention after the rebellion of the Arabs in the land of Israel. And after the British already gave all of the Jordan to the Jordanians instead of leaving it as a part of Israel, they decided to cut Israel into two and give almost everything to the Arabs, the Negev, the Galil, Judah, and Samaria, and what we call the separation plan, and give the Jews only a very, very small piece of land. And all the guys of Jabotinsky, what is the Likud today, the right and so on, they were completely opposed to that. And also inside Ben-Gurion's party, the leading figures were opposed. The only one that said, no, we are going to agree to this was Ben-Gurion himself. Now, he didn't do it because he thought that this is what we deserve, this small part of land they gave us. He said, we need first to have an agreement that recognizes a right to build a state. We'll go from there. From there, we'll start creating a reality where we get what we need. And indeed, 2 years after Israel was created, we already had the Negev and the Galil. And in 67, we took also Judea and Samaria and Gaza. So he saw that. He saw the potential of what will be in the future. And he was pragmatic. He said, we'll start with this, but we know the vision. We know where we are going. Were the people of Jabotinsky right? Sure. Were the other guys in his party, like Berel Katzenelson, right? Yes, they were right. But also Ben-Gurion was right. So there is no right and wrong answer in many of these scenarios. Many times both sides are right. Like now, yes, huge problems with the deal, huge threats, but also huge opportunities. And we get back the hostages. So this is a moment when you need leadership. You need to take a decision, understanding that this is a step in a long campaign and maintaining the vision. And the vision is very, very clear. It's total victory. We are not going to stop until we defeat our enemies, until there will be a decisive win on all fronts, until we eradicate Hamas. And if we understand that, then we can see moments where we can move a certain goal of war forward. And this moment now is the goal of returning the hostages.
Thank you, General. There are just so many questions coming in from our viewers. So I really thank all of our viewers for helping guide this conversation. It's clearly an issue that we all deeply care about. General, a lot of people in opposition to this deal will say that by giving terrorists to Hamas, we're basically saying Jewish lives are for negotiation. You take hostages and we'll make a deal with you. And we're perpetuating this challenge, this problem of our enemies trying to take hostages. So my question is, in an imaginary world, if Israel said, we will never negotiate with terrorists, we will never give a terrorist back for a hostage, would that change the mentality of our enemies? And they'd say, oh, you know what? They're no longer doing deals. We're going to stop kidnapping.
When Russia suffered from terror attacks, at a certain point, terrorists went into a theater and they took the whole people in the theater hostages. The Russians came and put gas into the theater that killed all the terrorists and the hostages. And the message was clear. You cannot threaten us with terror because we cannot be terrorized. We don't care about the people also. So we're willing to kill them. So you cannot really threaten us. But this is Russian culture. This is not Jewish culture. And for us, every person is a whole world. And I think that the way to bridge this is by saying, yes, maybe tactically we'll agree to release prisoners and we'll get our hostages. But strategically speaking, we're going to eradicate you. Nobody will attack us, rape our women, burn people alive, kill 1,200 people, do the atrocities that Hamas did, and survive this. So as long as we keep this strategic understanding that we need to eradicate them, then they will also learn the price for doing what they did to us. They need to be eradicated. And I think that any government that is not going to stick to the values and the vision I said now cannot lead Israel. And I believe that this current government, if they stop the war and don't eradicate Hamas, as I said, they're going to fall. We in IDSF have been really assisting the government to win the war because we saw determination. We saw the government determined to win. And as long as they are determined to win, we'll do everything within our hands to assist. But if we'll see a change, we'll see suddenly the government not fulfilling its mission to defend the people of Israel. We were created to make sure that the people of Israel are safe. Then we will fight this very, very strongly. We're not going to agree to such a reality. So I think that when you ask the question, Moshe, you look at it from the point of what our enemies will think. But it's not important just what our enemies think. It's important what our people think. And our people need to know that the state of Israel will fight for every Jew, wherever he is, for every Israeli. Now we are fighting in Israel for the Israeli people. There will be a day that the army, the Air Force, El Al, I don't know what, will go and fight for Jews around the world and will bring maybe thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Jews to Israel in places where they won't be safe. We need to know that the state of Israel will always defend every Jew wherever he is and every Israeli, because we also defend in Israel all Israelis. We endanger soldiers to bring. Just this last week, we fought to bring 2 corpses of hostages, Bedouins. Israelis are Israelis. We are fighting for all of them, Druze, Bedouins, Jews. But we also have a responsibility for all the Jewish people. So you want to be strong and send a strong message against our enemies, and they need to know we'll eradicate them. But we also send a message to our people. We're not going to give up anybody. We're going to fight, do whatever is needed to bring back our people.
General, thank you for taking all of my questions on this issue today. You know, when you look at the war in Gaza, it's been a long war, certainly compared to previous conflicts and wars of Israel. And I'm wondering to what extent is the length of this war and the inability to just completely eradicate Hamas and move on because of the hostages in Gaza? And if this new deal solves this issue of the hostages, will it bring about a decisive victory soon thereafter?
I think that definitely, unlike what we saw in Lebanon, the fact that there were hostages, and this is exactly what Hamas was counting on, made it much harder for us to fight. There were whole areas we didn't go in because there were hostages, and this helped Hamas survive until now. And therefore, taking out the hostages will make things much easier for us to eradicate them afterwards. Also, I think we had a tough year because we kept having international pressure, and especially from the administration, not to win, to stop the war, to do a ceasefire, to de-escalate, not to go into Rafah, not Philadelphia, not giving us munitions. You know, I remember even a day before the attack on Nasrallah, I was meeting with a high official, and they kept saying to me, "You need to de-escalate. You need to do a ceasefire." And I was thinking, you know, about the symbol of the U.S. I saw in the entrance of the room. You know, the eagle holding arrows, mighty eagle. And I said to him, you know, you guys, you used to be eagles. When did you become doves? You cannot be a world power being a dove. But happily, you know, at the end of the day, Israel did the job, and the day afterwards attacked Nasrallah. Huge success. And I think that if we do the deal now and they don't release all the hostages, we'll have to really coordinate with the US and put huge pressure, especially on the humanitarian aid. Hamas is alive because of the humanitarian aid. We need to change this. We need to prevent from Hamas humanitarian aid. We need to do a siege. We need to direct the citizens to areas that are not under control of Hamas, and only there give them aid, and not the amount of aid they are getting now with cigarettes and goods that, according to international law, you don't necessarily have to give them in a war. We'll have to put a completely different level of pressure, including dealing with eliminating all the leadership of Hamas outside Gaza also. There's a lot of work to do, and I feel confident that with Trump's administration, we'll have the full support, backup, munitions, and a strategy that is much more effective to really bring down Hamas.
Brigadier General Amir Avivi, thank you so much for joining this briefing, for really diving deep into this really tough issue with all of our viewers. Thank you to all of our viewers and supporters for tuning into this briefing. We will not be having a briefing tomorrow. We will be back with you next week on Monday, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. in Israel. Until then, stay safe, stay strong. Take care, everyone.